Hi, here we are at Antrim House, head office of Heritage New Zealand. I'm the property manager, my name is Amy, and it's my responsibility to make sure that this fantastic building is cared for. A lot of you have helped to support our projects here at Heritage New Zealand. In particular, we've got one here at Antrim House which is nearing completion, and that is our deck repair project. So we thought it would be really good to be able to show you where some of your support and donations have gone. We're going to take you through some of the project works that's going on at the moment and also introduce you to our building team.
Here at Antrim I've worked in the roof. I did the seismic re-strengthening of the chimneys.
Okay.
We put the corsets around the chimneys and tied them into the roof plane. Did briefly work on the fence here, and yeah, I think PCB has had quite a lengthy relationship with Antrim House and the work here, and yeah, it's really nice work, and it's really satisfying work to work on a house this old and this beautiful in the middle of the city. It's been a two-stage replacement of the original decking at Antrim House, and originally what they had was a mix of both, well, there's three types of wood. They had Quila, there was some Totra, we think there was some Kauri. Okay, so in terms of the replacement of the decking, what we've done dimension-wise is a like-for-like replacement. The only difference is the materials used. The difference from the old deck is it did have a rebate in places, but we've used a marine quality caulking sealant, which they typically use on boat decks. It's called Seeker 290i DC, and it's a sandable silicon, which is the important part. So once we have the deck laid and all the silicon laid in, we go through with a drum sander and sand the whole deck off to a uniform surface and then paint over it. And the key is the sandable part, because if you had a normal silicon, they don't sand well and they don't look like timber when they're sanded, and it tends to rip up and do horrible things when you try and sand it. So I think that's the critical thing, and it's also just a really robust kind of long-lasting system to use with this type of deck. That's typically what we pulled off, and these are the trim pieces around the bottom of the columns. This is generally not a bad piece, so a lot of them were pretty well gone. A lot of them split completely out before we took them. And this is a 50mm thick board that we're putting in,
yeah,
which is not something you can buy off the shelf. You get 45mm thick by 240 you can buy, but you don't get it that thick. So we had to have all this run specially for the job. And in terms of putting them in, there's a couple of interesting details, which is the main one is that we need to provide a rebate in these boards to actually support the bottom of the baluster rail. And all these pieces are equal, so as long as we're cutting them all exactly the same, it should all fit together in an ideal world. But there is lots of little adjustments you have to make to actually get these fitting. On the first half of the deck, we actually had one column that had to be replaced wholly, had to be removed, and then a new one put in. We had a man called Nigel, who is a turner, kind of joiner, who lives in Martin, and he made a homemade jig and turned what was basically a whole tree, and routed the flutes, did everything up in Martin, brought it down, and we installed that in one piece. Wow. The old piece that we took out was rotten right through the core of the old column. Yep. So as we cut it out and sectioned it, and it was Jara, so it was incredibly heavy, we had to take it out in maybe 6 sections, and we found that as we went down, some of the sections just completely fell apart. We're pretty sure that the water was getting in both at the top and at the bottom. There was a lot of rot at the bottom, and the way that these are set up, if there's any kind of holes or any places that water can kind of track into behind the details and into the column, they rot out from within, and you'd never know that they're actually that rotten, because if everything on the outside is still solid, it's hard to know how rotten they are. But in that case, I think someone had tested it and they'd pushed a pen right through it, and we had to replace the whole thing. And we haven't had that situation on any of the other columns around here. The difference between the old column over the other side and the new column is we used a new modern style Bomac bracket to actually hold it in, which is an earthquake rated bracket to hold the bottom of the column to the foundation. Whereas the old columns were located on what looked like kind of a galv piece of pipe, and slotted on top and then put into place.